Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the PinkUn Friday night preview show, coming on live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well. Myself, we're joined by Dave Freezer, looking ahead to tomorrow's game against Wayne Rooney's Derby County, as we're legally obliged to call them, as they previously Frank Lampard's Derby County, if that helps anyone. But of course, as ever, get your comments and questions in over the next half an hour, 45 minutes or so, and we'll do our best to answer them. Dave, how are you doing? We were talking before we came on, actually, about how it's been a while since we've had you on one of these.
Yeah, weirdly, I don't seem to work Fridays very often. It's because of the schedule, isn't it? I've ended up doing the midweek presses, and Paddy and you do the Friday ones. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to this. My hair probably looks a bit different. There's two pretty brilliant haircuts going on here, aren't there? mine going through.
Yeah, mine is out of control. I'll be honest. I've still got a couple of weeks as well before it gets cut. It's a concern. I'll be honest. I'm worried that I'm going to end up with. It's kind of getting. I don't know if you can see at the back. It's kind of getting into sort of mullet stage. I'll be honest. It's not in a good way. But I haven't done what our colleague Paddy Davitt did the other day with his after Colney video, where he decided to wear a cap backwards, which was very
disappointed. That's what we should have done. We should have started the video both wearing a backwards cap.
Yeah, we should have. It's clearly a trend. We're gonna go with it. Anyway, Derby tomorrow, Dave. I think it's probably best to start in terms of what could happen tomorrow. Norwich City could get promoted. Probably you would say unlikely. I think given the fact that essentially they'd have to win and two other results would have to go in their favour, but there is a possibility. And you were sat in the press conference. There we go. There's a league table, so you can kind of map out the scenario. As I kind of pointed out earlier, Swansea, the most they can get is 90 points. The most Brentford can get is 91. And that is based on them winning all of their games, which obviously will not happen. They've both still got to play Watford. So Norwich could move on to 90 points tomorrow. Of course, if Swansea drop points, if Brentford drop points, that would be enough to secure their place in the Premier League. They're playing Derby County, as you can see, 18th position in the league, a little bit inconsistent in terms of form, but Wayne Rooney has made them a bit solid defensively, and they've got so many injuries at the moment, it's untrue. But Dave, just to talk about obviously what could happen tomorrow and promotion, it kind of felt like they'd already achieved it, judging by sort of half the questions of the press conference we were in earlier. But it is, isn't it, a matter of when rather than if, which I suppose is a really lovely position for Norwich to be in.
It is. It's no doubt about it. I mean, 87 points in all but 3 of the last 20 seasons has been enough for promotion. They've still got 6 games to play. They're unbeaten in 12. They will pick up more points. If they somehow didn't break 90 points, I think everyone would be pretty surprised. That would be a bit of a downturn from this position. So it is literally a case of when and not if. But there's been a few times this week when I've written 17 points clear or said 13 points clear, and I've had to go and double check because I've just thought, that can't be right. They're 17 points clear of third place with 6 games remaining. It's a ridiculous position. Helped by Brentford and Swansea stumbling. Swansea might even struggle to get into the playoffs the way they're going. But as Norwich fans, who cares about that at the moment? It's just a case of, from here, finishing in the best possible style. And I think if you watch our videos of the presser and things like that and read the stuff at PinkUn.com, you get the vibe from Daniel today. He wasn't being blunt about it or anything and just saying, I'm not going to talk about that. He openly said, look, we know what the table looks like. We know we're in a wonderful position. But he, as head coach, his job, what he is paid to do is trying to get them to win every single game. And they will want to try and break 100 points. They will obviously want to win the title. They rarely will come out and say those things, the same as, breaking records and things like that. Players and coaches don't tend to like to actually put that in the media, do they? That's normally quite a rare thing for them to say, but they, of course, will do. So, yeah, a great position. I've got a horrible feeling not horrible feeling, because I don't think it's necessarily that much of a bad thing, but I think Norwich are going to be promoted about 5 p.m. next Saturday after Brentford and Swansea have played, and ahead of the home game against Bournemouth at 8 o'clock, which will almost turn that then into a bit of a promotion party. But of course, Norwich will still be going for the title. So I'd be surprised if things are settled tomorrow. As you say, Derby have conceded 29 in 29 since Wayne Rooney went in there. So I know they've got injuries and things, but defensively they're pretty strong. They're not going to be like the Huddersfield game, I don't think, even with their injuries. But, Swansea go to Millwall and Brentford go to Preston. So they are difficult games.
Yeah, and just to map out the scenario, so tomorrow I've kind of mapped it out. Norwich need to win, and need Swansea and Brentford to drop points. Swansea kick off at 12:30 tomorrow live on the TV, so we should get a fairly decent picture of whether or not it's possible come 3 o'clock at Pride Park. If Swansea or Brentford do win, then the attention shifts to Tuesday evening. I think there are various different connotations around obviously tomorrow's results, but if Swansea do win, then I think if they don't beat Sheffield Wednesday, then Norwich are up. But I think it probably depends on what Brentford do. Anyway, if Norwich win both games over the course of the next week, they're up, regardless of what anyone else does. So fairly straightforward. But
they're up anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, they are. They are.
There's no way that Swansea or Brentford are going to catch them.
No,
I'm saying it now.
Crucially for Norwich fans, all you have to do at the moment is look at the top four of the table, because Norwich City aren't going to fall out of that mathematically. So, and even that looks unlikely. There you go. Tony is that's the third time we've had it up in the opening 7 minutes. I don't think you get bored looking at it if you're associated with Norwich City, because those numbers, those points tallies, really are quite extraordinary. But of course, Derby are going to pose a different challenge, and we kind of talk about these games against teams that sit at the bottom of the table, particularly at this stage of the season. They can often be really testing, because teams in the middle, there's that phrase, and they're on the beach, and they can often be dangerous too for other reasons. But when you're coming up against a team genuinely in a relegation dogfight, which Derby are, I think they've got a fairly decent cushion at the moment, but Rotherham have 3 games in hand, you can find a really determined, really resilient, really tough opponent, and that might be what Norwich City find tomorrow.
I think so, yeah. I mean, they are still in the relegation mix. I think they've only won one of their last 9, haven't they? So, but 43 points, they do very well to get relegated from that point. So I know Rotherham have got a lot of games in hand and things, but they haven't been doing particularly well. So I think that they'll, like Huddersfield and Preston and teams like that were, I suppose Preston aren't anymore, but they're just sort of maybe a little bit nervously looking over their shoulders. But I think Derby would do well to get promoted from the position they're in. But yeah, they've done okay since Rooney went in. They had a terrible start to the season under Philip Cocu, didn't they? And he seems to have got them going. And Daniel Farke said today that he thought they'd actually played some pretty decent football along the way as well. And if they'd have had their important players fit, like he referenced Lee Gregory and Martin Waghorn, then he thinks they'd be in a better position. But yeah, I think this will be one of those games we've seen a few times this season, like when someone's going to feel like a home game, like when Birmingham came to Carrow Road or Wickham. I think they will basically park the bus and hope for the best.
Yeah, I think someone will correct me, but I think Derby have 11 injuries at the moment, and they're all to fairly key players as well. Martin Waghorn, Curtis Davis, who was excellent in the reverse fixture, wasn't it, at Carrow Road. Christian Bielik as well, who on his day is certainly one of the better midfielders in the division. Had a very good loan spell with Charlton a couple of years ago. I'm trying to think that there's numerous others, and you can check them out at your own accord, but they're essentially missing quite a big core of that starting 11. David Marshall, of course, is in goal for them. He made a couple of wonderful saves in the reverse fixture. There was a header, I think a Jordan Hugel header that he saved really well in the reverse fixture, if memory serves. But I could be completely wrong.
Norwich should have won that game, shouldn't they? It was only, well, as it turned out to be, as I said to Farke in the press conference today, we ended up witnessing the final goal of Wayne Rooney's brilliant career. Yeah,
we did. It's going to be interesting to see how Norwich approach that. After Tuesday night, Dave, given the 7-0 win, which is, again, still remarkable to say, but particularly remarkable to think about given the manner it happened. There were times where I think we were pretty close to applause, if not were applauding in the press box. Some of the goals were sublime. Is there going to be an element for you of after the Lord Mayor's show about this Saturday? It was interesting to kind of get Daniel's thoughts on that today.
It was, yeah. I put that to him because that's clearly going to be a bit of a concern. And he was pretty effusive in his answer, to be fair. He said he was really pleased with the way that the players came into training on Wednesday morning. He said Tuesday night they were all buzzing. I'm sure we've all seen the video clips of the dressing room, Alex Tetty singing On the Ball City, Timu Pukki being locked out, and, you know, the music cranked up as it should be. You know, an epic night, with the only downside, of course, being that the fans weren't there to make it properly epic and a proper memorable night. But he was very pleased with the way the players came in on Wednesday morning, and they were hungry, or greedy is the word that he likes, isn't it, to go and get the win at Derby, to go and do those things that I teed up earlier, to go and win the title, to go and get 100 points. If they can win the next 6, that is their aim, isn't it? That is their target. They're in such a good place. confidence is always such a massive thing in football, and that is just absolutely flowing out of them at the moment, isn't it? 4-0 up inside the first 42 minutes. With the caveat that Huddersfield also had terrible injuries, didn't they? They had to change the goalkeeper at the last minute as well. They were in a bit of a mess, and they were just out of their depth, really. So that's encouraging to hear. But as Farker finished on with his answer, which you can see in full, I think I put that online for 5 o'clock. I think I've written about 10 things today, so I can't remember. I think that's online already. He finished his quote saying, "But the important thing is that they take that out on the pitch."
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see how they approach it. Just finally, before we leave kind of the promotion ramifications and all that side, of course, Watford play tonight. Reading it might be kicking off. I think it's a bit later, actually. There's sometimes a 5 o'clock game. I'm sure someone will point it out. But if they lose tonight, then that essentially means that Norwich would need to win, I think, all their games up to Watford in a couple of weeks' time, and then they can win the title against them. So even that is obviously coming over the hill, I think, if you work out the points. And you mentioned there, in terms of what Norwich City could achieve, their maximum points tally that they can get currently is 105 points, which should be one shy of that famous Reading team, who obviously have the record with 106. So yeah, it's quite incredible to even be talking about this. And there was a nice line from Daniel Farker today where he said, "I'm not surprised, but it is very impressive," and that kind of sums it up, doesn't it? I don't think if you'd have slapped Norwich City's squad on a bit of paper in front of probably any Championship follower, they'd have said that's very decent. But actually, as we know, a squad being good on paper and a squad being good on the pitch are often two different things. But Norwich have been able to turn it around. I guess the hard thing to do after a relegation is to lift players, isn't it? To find that mentality again. And somehow he's managed to turn into a squad that lost 10 consecutive Premier League games, was pretty down in the dumps, into one that is capable of basically dominating the Championship, which they've done this season.
Yeah, well, I remember being at Huddersfield on the opening day, and when Ida came on and scored that goal, the unselfish Pookie pass after intercepting Richard Stearman's pass. And I remember us feeling, they'd scored a goal, which they'd hardly scored a goal for the last 6 months, and they certainly hadn't been in a winning position, let alone win, since February, since lockdown, since all the stuff with COVID began. So that felt like a big day then. And ahead of Tuesday night's match, I'd look back on those highlights, and Ben Godfrey was still playing. The transfer window wasn't closed. All the stuff with Cantwell and Buendia and errands to Barcelona and all that stuff was within the first month of the season. So it really wasn't until the transfer window closed that they could get their heads down and crack on. And they have, slowly but surely, they did, even through that injury crisis. I think that was probably the period that really set it up. You could probably pinpoint the turning point being Tim Krul's penalty save at Rotherham, I would have said, and we probably will talk about those sort of things a lot in the weeks and months ahead, because that would have been going 2-0 down at Rotherham, wouldn't it? But instead, they ended up winning in injury time, and that started to change the narrative. And then they persevered through the injury crisis and just kept managing to edge games. And then once they got through January and they got Yanulis in at left back and things like that, and the injuries all seemed to finally clear up, the Swansea game just seemed to be that final wake-up call, didn't it? To kick them into the next gear that they needed to, because we'd all been talking about, well, they're doing well, but they're capable of more than this. And then we've seen it, haven't we? And it's just been a case of finally fulfilling what they're capable of, really. And, they were one of the favourites to go up, even if the promotion was a surprise story 2 years ago. The title win was a surprise 2 years ago. And they've done it. They do, as you said a few minutes ago, have a very good squad, a big squad as well, which has taken a fair bit of management. And as we've talked about a bit recently and will again, there's a lot still to be sorted out this summer. You've got Tribal, Leitner, Dermich, Closer, loads of players with uncertainty around, and we still don't know 100% what the squad will look like next season. But for now, it's just nice and simple, really. Just a dream of a scenario. You can just take it step by step, get promotion done, tick it off. Title, tick it off. 100 points. Okay, great. But first, get the club record done. That's 94 points in the second tier, isn't it? If you do that, then go for 100 points. Just take it step by step. If they don't get 100 points, so what? I don't think any Norwich fan's seriously going to care too much. It's a lovely little fact, but that's about it. Same as the club record. If they do it, great. If not, who cares? Bring on the Premier League.
Yeah, and all that matters if that is that they get their hands on that trophy, I think now, isn't it? Considering, as we kind of talk about, promotions pretty much there. I think you would like to see them finish the job. And I think that's very much the message inside the club as well. Daniel Farke said today, actually, as soon as promotion's done, it's going to be about the title. And I don't think that'll be too far behind anyway. Let's hear from Daniel Farke. Let's have his first clip. He was asked today whether he would indulge in a bit of praise for himself. He decided not to take that. Here's Daniel Farke praising some of his players and his squad today.
I don't think it's a coach's game or manager's game. I'm 100% convinced that football is a player's game. It was a player's game. It should be a player's game. I'm there in order to help them a little bit, and they deserve to be in the spotlight. They should be in the spotlight, and really, I can even live without the spotlight. I don't mind if someone wants to give me some compliments or some praise. It's also right. I'm not scared of it. All okay, but I'm not dancing on the table and enjoying just myself. And if I have to give some credit, not to the players, then it's definitely to our club, to our key people, to our owners, because I don't think you can't ask for better owners anyhow, because they lead the club with such a humility and staying humble and such a love for the club, and they care more for the people, for the whole community. It's fantastic. And also our sporting director. So it's more like you can't ask for a better job than what Stuart Webber has done, because it's always like when the wind is a bit in your face and difficult times, then he's there, then he's like a shield, and he's there for the club, and he helps in each and every moment. And when there's success, he always hides, and he doesn't have to be there, and he doesn't want to be in the spotlight. I can't ask for better sporting director. I'm really honored and feel really blessed to be allowed to work for such great people here, and together with such great people in such a important role for this fantastic club, and really all the credit goes to them, and I'm really happy that I'm allowed to work in such a privileged role.
I'm just wondering, Dave, what sort of thing makes Daniel Farke dance on the table? Because he always talks about not dancing on the table. I wonder what it would take for him to actually get on one and dance. But that kind of sums him up, that clip, doesn't it? He's never been one that's about himself, and he's always been keen to kind of deflect the praise. But he does deserve a lot of credit for what Norwich City have done this season, because it would have been quite easy for him, as he's spoken about in the past, to take a job elsewhere after relegation and after how the top flight season unravelled and how disappointing it kind of ended. It would have been easy perhaps for him to go back to Germany and get a fairly decent job in the Bundesliga. He decided not to do that. He deserves credit for, I guess, building this Norwich side back up, doesn't he, after sort of where it was back in July or August.
Oh yes, he does. He's done a fantastic job, and he's always going to be self-effacing about it and stuff, isn't he? But it was a major job, and if, as he probably and hopefully will, gets a second championship title on his CV, then it kind of feels like, regardless of what happens with Norwich next year, he's going to get a big opportunity somewhere. Stuart Webber has predicted he will manage in the Champions League at some point. And I'm sorry, mate, I'm going to have to break off. We've got a bit of breaking news here, because former Norwich North MP Ian Gibson has died. Now, I'm talking off the top of my head here, but I'm pretty sure Ian was a bit of a Norwich fan. That has I just saw our editor tweet it a minute or so ago. Dave Powell said, really sad to hear the news that former Norwich North MP Dr. Ian Gibson has died. What a character he was, and so passionate about Norwich and the many causes he championed. Now, I'm pretty sure that Ian, obviously, he lived in Norwich for a long while, so I think he probably became a bit of an adopted Norwich fan. But certainly, I'm sure I've seen tweets and things like that. So that's sad. I'm relying on Wikipedia here, but he was 82, Labour MP. I'm pretty certain on saying there. But sorry, just to break in with a little bit of breaking news there, because that's my Twitter feed is just filled up with that, and also, of course, which everyone will have of course seen today, Prince Philip's passing at 99. The club have tweeted that there will be a 2-minute silence prior to tomorrow's game, which I presume will be across the board in the EFL, and that both teams will be wearing black armbands as well. So yes, sorry, we can carry on with the football, but I just thought, as that was breaking news, that was probably something that people would want to know. Yeah,
definitely, and thoughts with Ian's family, definitely. Before we get into people's comments. Just quickly about Lucas Rupp and what Daniel said about him today. He's kind of had a few of these muscular injuries. It's another setback for him. Perhaps more interesting was the fact he's going to see a specialist to have a look at his blood and see if they can kind of identify the root of the problems that he's been having.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Farkas said that he's been outstanding at times this season when he's fully fit and on form. He's been really pleased with what he's contributed to this season. Pretty much suggested that he definitely sees him as being part of the squad next season, as long as, you know, fitness is okay and he gets over this injury and that the specialist doesn't find some big problem. But I think it's probably unlikely we'll see him again this season. So when he sort of revealed that news, that's why I sort of followed up with a bit more about Lucas, because I thought it was the right time to really sort of review, really. And as I tweeted, he's been very good at times. There have been a few forgettable games where he didn't turn up. So he's maybe not quite had the consistency that McLean has had, both in terms of form and fitness. But in terms of performance level, there have been a few games where he really was excellent, wasn't he? The Birmingham home game was one where he got 107 passes or something. And the game before he got injured as well, he got both assists at Forest, didn't he? Set up Pookie and Dowell. So when you think that he came into the club last year and most Norwich fans were pretty unconvinced, he'd come in during a difficult time, during a relegation battle, and hadn't really felt like he got a handle on sort of the club and the team. I think most fans now would be pretty happy to have him as part of the squad next year, and would feel that he's someone who could contribute if they're fully fit and on form. But probably he's got a big job on his hands to be a real important player. But you never know. He's got it in the tank. And as Daniel pointed out, he's played some proper Bundesliga football. I think it's about 150 appearances in the Bundesliga. He played for Mönchengladbach and Hoffenheim and Paderborn with Mario Vrancic. So, a shame for him. But it almost feels like with the situation that they're in, I'd take it a bit like the Byram situation and Gibson. Just don't even try and rush him back. Just let him rest it. A hamstring is never something that you want to be a repetitive injury. So just make sure he's right for pre-season, I would.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said there, and as Daniel pointed out as well, there were stages in that opening period of the season where he kept Kenny McLean out of the side, which is some achievement considering the form that Kenny's managed this season. And and like you say, played some real sort of top flight experience. And I remember last year when he perhaps got a lot of criticism, was playing out of position. It does kind of feel like we've seen what Lucas Rupp can do this season, as opposed to last season where perhaps he was filling holes and ensuring that Norwich City didn't get beat maybe as badly as they would have. It's the stage of the show now where I'm going to come to your questions. So everyone watching I'm sure has got a question. If you've got one, put them down below and we'll try and answer as many as we can. We'll start with Sophie on YouTube. She said, blimey, could Colin have been any more downbeat on Terrace Talk earlier? If you haven't seen that, you can go and watch that on our YouTube channel. He's a Norwich fan living in Derby. I think his wife is a Derby fan as well. She said, I'm going with glass half full Corey and his Norwich victory prediction. We owe the Rams and Mr. Rooney one after that Carrow Road defeat. Yeah, well, it was raised today that Derby are the only championship side that Daniel Farker has faced and not beaten. So, you could say Norwich Road a victory. Toby Mills on YouTube. Do you think that we are going to slip up at all in the next upcoming games? I'm hinting at Watford and Bournemouth in particular. And do you think we will be promoted by then? I'll throw that one to you, Dave, because there's an interesting sort of 3-game period here where Norwich are playing 3 teams that beat them. That beat them, which is a rarity in the Championship this season. That's certainly not been the case in many games. I think they were all 1-0 as well.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah, 3 1-0s in a row. Well, that's just another contribution to why they will keep their foot on the pedal, really, isn't it? That you don't want to get over the line, win promotion, and then sort of limp your way to the title or to the Premier League, do you? You want to finish with your momentum intact. And as I said earlier, your confidence is so sky high that carries you a certain way through games. I think they probably will want a bit of revenge for the Derby home defeat. They should have won that game. They had loads of chances, didn't they? Bournemouth, equally, me and you were both there that day, cooking in the sun, weren't we? And it was a game where they didn't play that badly. It was one of those where, yes, they lost 1-0. Rupp had played quite well. and I think Hernandez played quite well as well from memory. And really, it was a game where you felt they probably could have got more from it. Watford on Boxing Day was probably one of the duff notes of the season, but
we
Watford
definitely weren't cooking that day, were we?
No, no, on Boxing Day. Although we did get a hot chocolate, didn't we? So that was a nice surprise. But yeah, I just think they'll be fired up for all of these. I really don't sense within this group that anybody will be complacent or overconfident, because they know with the squad at the moment, if you don't perform, there's plenty of players just waiting to get an opportunity. And you want to be on the pitch at the moment, don't you? You want to make sure you're on the pitch when that promotion ceiling goal goes in and you can celebrate it. So yeah, I think they'll be well up for it. But that is probably the 3 games. If they were to get probably even just 6 points from those two, then they've won the title. So the Watford game could be really exciting, and Bournemouth have got plenty to play for, haven't they? They are going to have to work really hard to get into the playoffs. Yeah, should be an exciting time. Should be some good football as well.
Just on that Watford game, that's going to be a pretty good test for Norwich, isn't it? Particularly as, like I say, promotion probably will be secured by then, with a view to next season. If Watford, and as it looks at the moment, they're going to be the side that come up in second, maybe barring any sort of drop off in form. I think they're quite a way ahead of Brentford in third. That's going to be kind of a good test and a good marker to where Norwich City are heading into the Premier League season against a side maybe that's going to come up against them next season.
Yeah, it's a good shout. From a Norwich point of view, you would much rather it's Brentford and Barnsley coming up, wouldn't you, than Watford and Bournemouth, because they both have reasonably wealthy owners behind them. They have lots of Premier League experience, plenty of, the sort of the core of a potentially decent experienced squad. So that's probably looking unlikely to happen now. Watford throughout the season have been pretty solid, even before they brought Cisco Munoz in. It wasn't like they were doing particularly badly, was it? I think they were in the playoffs at that point. So yeah, that is a good sort of measuring stick, that game. But I think that night it will just be all about the title, won't it? Watford will have to come and play. They're not going to be able to, a draw's not going to do them any good, I wouldn't have thought, but we're still talking 2 games ahead of that. But yeah, it should be quite the spectacle. I think Sky have already picked it up, haven't they? Yeah, they moved it to a 6 o'clock for on that Tuesday night so yeah, they've picked those Bournemouth and Watford games because they know that they could be the big nights, couldn't they?
Yeah, part of me thinks it would be quite funny if they did it tomorrow when it's not on TV, given the next 2 games have been scheduled for TV. But there you go. Just before we go any further, we've had a comment from Colin, who was on Terrace Talk this week. He's put downbeat ? Harsh, realistic. I did say champions after Watford. I knew what you meant, Colin. It's fine. I didn't think you were too bad. Joe McKenzie said, evening chaps, big win tomorrow, 3-1, best squad in the league. On the ball City. Keith Shaw has said, will we take the title? I think you've got to say that they're in a wonderful position to take the title, aren't they, Dave?
Oh yeah. They won the title with 94 points last time, so they're only 7 short of that. I think 2 wins in whatever form it comes in this last 6 games will do the job, because they're already 8 points clear of Watford. So, that would then take Watford to win all of their games, wouldn't it? And there's probably a chance of that. But as we were just saying, that night at Carrow Road on a week on Tuesday, that's when we'll really we'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's looking increasingly likely that Norwich will win the title. I do have to say, we've got a bit more news for Kings Lynn wise. Adam Marriott has left Kings Lynn town by the sound of it, which is obviously a big loss for them. Striker who scored a large portion of their goals. It sounds like he's gone to Eastleigh, which is quite a loss. I think he'd been furloughed, hasn't he, at Kings Lynn? I think that's kind of maybe the situation. They've maybe looked to get him off the books. Obviously, the financial situation may have dictated that one, but there we go from a Kings Lynn perspective. Back to the comments. Woody Norwich 80 on Periscope has said, big game tonight too. Come on, Reading. Ed Ivans, why would Daniel Farker say, yes, we are going to break the club record? It's not his style. And then Neil Black has asked, which positions need strengthening the most if/when we are promoted? Dave, what would you say? Because I'd probably highlight, I think maybe 3 or 4 positions where Norwich could probably do with extra cover. Where do you think the priority will be in terms of their shopping list this summer?
Well, they'll need another left back in some form, won't they? Because I don't think anyone's expecting Kintier to be signed. So you've only really got Yanulis, potentially got Sam Byram as a left back option, but I think at this stage you'd be unwise to bank on that, wouldn't you, given his injury history? And Barley Mumba, he is a right back, really. I don't think you'd bank on him to be a left back. You've got Akinfenwa, who might come back into it. He seems to have done well for Charlton all season. He has played left back before when he was younger for Grimsby and Luton, but he's a big lad, so he'd be sort of in the Dan Burn mould, the giant left back at Brighton, if he was deployed there. But he's got the physicality and the pace and stuff. But I think he would be seen as a centre back now. So left back, yeah. Centre back, I just think with the injuries we've seen with all three of Gibson, Hanley and Zimmerman now, you've got to bring in one. That's probably, along with a striker, where I'd spend the money. If there is a decent amount of money, hopefully, to be spent. I think you need to bring in someone of at least Hanley and Gibson's standard to be competing for that, because they just cannot be in a position like they were last time where injuries left them playing Tete in centre back and things like that. As well as Omobama Dele has done, you wouldn't want to be going into the Premier League with him as a starter, would you? He's still so young and untested. He would have to really perform well this next 6 games to persuade people that that's a realistic opportunity. So yeah, centre back, and then I like the look of the striker they were linked with today. I'm going to have to remind myself of his name, I'm afraid.
I thought you were going to have a go at pronouncing it then. I'm looking forward to that.
Georgios Giacomakis, who is a Greek international, seems to fit almost exactly the profile you'd expect of Webber and the recruitment team, isn't it? 26, he scored 24 goals in 26 games in the Dutch top flight this season. He'd get a work permit. His contract's up in 2022, so value-wise, he might be available, or possible. But if a guy is scoring that sort of return, then you'd expect Norwich would have quite a bit of competition to get him, unless he's really good mates with Yanulis, perhaps. But I think that's the sort of calibre you need. That's what they wanted Dermich to be, wasn't it, when they signed him? They knew they were taking a bit of a risk, but because he was a free transfer, they hoped that could work out. And I think if Dermich had stayed fit, then he could have been a decent player to work in tandem with Pookie and come in and out, to have a proper competitive battle over who's got the starting spot. But that one also has come from Graham Bailey, who is a proper freelance journalist who has got his sort of ear to the ground transfer wise. I don't normally take a great deal from Team Talk, particularly seriously, but because it's come from Graham, I think it's worth paying attention to, that Norwich's interest might well be genuine, just because it fits the profile perfectly. So yeah, striker, centre back, left back, I think that's where they have to have some priorities. Then you're into the skip issue, aren't you? If he's not coming back, then you've got to sign at least one defensive midfielder. And the number 10 position, yeah, you've got Dow there now. Maybe Rupp would be seen as the number 10. Maybe even McLean in the Premier League could be the number 10. But I think given that they signed Andre Duda in the January of last season, I think Farke will want a number 10. So given what I said earlier about all the issues there are to be settled with loanees and things as well, it is going to be a seriously busy summer.
It is, yeah, and one that I expect Norwich City fans will be looking forward to for various reasons, not least because obviously we're approaching a Premier League season, and hopefully we'll be in a position where we can get some, if not all, fans back to Carrow Road by the start of the season. Ben Trafford is from one goal scorer to another. Dave said, "What are we saying, lads? Pookie to get 30 goals."
Right. Well, if he gets 4. He moves level with John Dean, doesn't he, in 8th place. So that takes him on to 70 goals. So to have done that in 3 seasons would be absolutely insane. And that would level his 29 goals from 2 seasons ago that got him the Golden Boot. You would have thought Ivan Toney will do enough to just keep ahead of him now, wouldn't you? Because he'll know that Pookie's chasing him down. But yeah, the form he's in, he should have scored a hat-trick at Preston, as he openly admitted on Tuesday night, didn't he? He said he should have had a hatful then. So if Wendia and Cantwell keep playing the way that they are, then yeah, there's every chance that he could catch Toney.
Yeah, there really is. I think he'll probably just fall short. But look, if he gets a hat trick again, then that raises it, doesn't it? But he's one that's kind of scores one or two. We got 5-6 games left, so I think there's every possibility he could get to 30. James Hilton thanks James, pointing out that the Watford play at 7:45 tonight kickoff. Cameron Hansel has said we're the best team ever to grace the Championship, even if we don't break the record. Thoughts on that, Dave?
Ooh, stylistically, I suppose you could argue that, but Reading got the 106 points, didn't they? So they will forever, well, not forever, maybe, but I'd be surprised if anyone ever broke it, because that is a ridiculous amount of points, isn't it? When you think how good Norwich have been this season, and now with 6 games to go, the most they can get is 105, then that Reading team was seriously good, weren't they? But yeah, I mean, Leeds were obviously very good, and Norwich were very good 2 years ago, although it was more chaotic, wasn't it? They didn't have the same defensive strength, but they did score more goals. So, don't know. Newcastle were very good the year they went up. Wolves were excellent, weren't they? Leicester. There's been some excellent champions of the Championship. I think we would need to see Norwich break the 100 points for them to be in that conversation.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely, and I think they're going to get pretty close one way or another. Whether or not they can do it or not, we'll see. I suppose it depends how hard they party after promotion / the title is secured. This is an interesting one from Goatsy67 on Periscope. He said, "Evening all. What do you think of Farke not getting Manager of the Month yet again?" I will broaden this out and say it's not necessarily an issue about this month, because I think, if you delve into the numbers, you could probably make a case that Xisco Munoz probably deserved it given the run of form. Is the broader argument not how has he only won it once in what looked like 2 title-winning seasons, which came back in November 2019? I mean, to put that in context, Mick McCarthy won more during his time at Ipswich, and they achieved one playoff finish. It is a strange one, I guess, for Norwich fans to look at.
It is, yeah. Who was the Watford manager before Munoz? I can't remember his name.
Ivic,
that's it. He won it in the first month, didn't he? The Barnsley managers won it. The Brentford managers won it. So maybe, I think it's just become a bit of a quirk almost, because the top 6 have been pretty dominant, or certainly top 7 or 8. It's been that same group of teams all season, isn't it? And all of them have had good runs of form. Like Swansea were excellent. Brentford went like 20 games unbeaten, didn't they? So yeah, as you say, for March, you can't really have an issue. Watford won 5 of 5, Norwich won 4, and drew 1 of 5. But I think all that really matters is he gets Manager of the Season this time. And
what do you think he will? Because I've seen a lot of discussion about this on social media, because obviously last time Norwich won the title, that was given to Chris Wilder. I think you can probably make a valid case for, say, Val Ismail at Barnsley and the job he's done there. Probably even Steve Cooper and the way he's lifted Swansea up. I think there are probably various elements. Do you think he will win Manager of the Season from here?
The only way I can see him not would be, if Ismail managed to get Barnsley promoted, that would be an incredible job. I don't think he will. And they play some pretty ugly football, but it's very intense football, isn't it? I don't think Barnsley would be anywhere near ready for the Premier League. I think they would be coming straight back down, which would be a good thing for Norwich. But other than that, it's only whether Watford manage to pip Norwich now and steal that momentum, and Norwich slump across the line, which I don't think will happen, then maybe. But if Norwich win the title with 95 plus points and Farke didn't win it, then I think that would be pretty disgraceful either way, really. But ultimately, it doesn't matter too much. You could make the argument for Wilder 2 years ago, couldn't you? What he did at Sheffield United was a special achievement. They were nowhere near as good as Norwich in terms of ability. They weren't as good as Leeds, but they were mentally fantastic, weren't they? And tactically so organised. He literally got blood from a stone with that Sheffield United team, and then he took them to 5th in the Premier League before everything absolutely imploded. So he did do a fantastic job. Daniel's said lots of fun, good stuff, hasn't he, in the presses about it. I really don't think he's that worried. I think the fans are far more worried.
Yeah. It's interesting how this thing has evolved over time from no, we don't want it because of the curse to actually how's he not winning it. But I do get people's point, given that he's only won it once in
Yeah.
2 very successful championship seasons. Why I'm a 10 on Periscope, just to make sure Norwich can get promoted tomorrow. They can indeed, as I mapped out at the start. Norwich need to beat Derby, and Brentford and Swansea both need to drop points. So that is the situation that would need to take place for Norwich to get promoted to the Premier League tomorrow. Ben Trafford, do you think we'll give Quintilla back to Villarreal? I think you'd have to say at this stage, given since Yanulis has come in, he's been first choice for Daniel Farke. He looks a lot more like a Daniel Farke fullback than I think Quintilla did. Probably looking fairly likely, isn't it, that Xavi Quintilla will return to Villarreal come the summer?
Yeah, I felt like he missed an opportunity at Preston because he played quite well in some parts. Statistically, I think he might have made the most passes. He was certainly involved in the game, wasn't he? But defensively, by the end, he looked pretty knackered, and Hanley had to bail him out a few times. And his delivery wasn't good enough. That was what he was getting praised for early in the season, is that his crosses were great, his set pieces were great. They were fine, but they didn't actually create anything. He didn't really link with Pukki particularly well. And yeah, it's just emphasised the fact that he hasn't really felt like he's fitted in particularly well. I think I said before kickoff against Preston that it might have made more sense to play Hugill if you're going to play Quintilla, because he's going to put the ball in the box, and that's just not Pukki's game at all, is it? So yeah, he's one he's not exactly been a disaster or anything. He's a decent player. I think if you put him in a team that he fits better, there's probably a decent player in there. But I don't ever really feel like he's quite fitted the style of play, or quite got to grips with the physicality of the Championship and things like that. So no, I'm not expecting him to be coming back, because they would have to pay a reasonable fee to get him in from Villarreal, wouldn't they? And yeah, it's probably a shame for him. But you probably shouldn't judge him too harshly on the Preston game, because that was his first league appearance in 5 months or something. He'd only played in the FA Cup game against Coventry since then. So yeah, he'll probably feel a little bit hard done by, but if he's honest with himself, then it's just not quite gone to plan.
He's a follow up on a question on Quintilla, maybe not one you're expecting, but do you think he looks like Michael Bublé, or is it just me that sees that?
Oh, he does, yeah. I saw Bali Mumba put something on Insta, didn't he?
Saying, he did, yeah.
Norwich, Michael Bublé, Mickey Bubbles. I bet they all call him that in training or something.
They must do, yeah. There's definitely, there you go. If it doesn't work at Norwich, then he can probably get out on the circuit as a Bublé.
Can he sing?
Like. Can he say? Well, yeah. This is it. Ed Ivans has said, "Do you see Alex Tettey as part of the coaching staff next season?" That's an interesting one. I think, was it Stuart Webber who was asked about this and kind of said that he would have to earn his stripes essentially and maybe do a bit of youth coaching before. But I think it's probably pretty clear that if Alex Tettey isn't going to sign a contract at Norwich City, that's probably him done, isn't it, in terms of professional football, I would imagine.
Maybe, unless there's one last sort of fun payday to go and have in Norway. But he seems to be quite settled here, doesn't he? And he's got a young family and things like that. So, it's the message it sends to the other coaches within the club, really, isn't it? If a player just goes straight to the top, it doesn't really feel like sort of Webber's vibe, does it? But he's a great character. So maybe if it was a case of he was sort of the under 23s assistant and sort of a part-time first team coach or something like that, so that he can earn his coaching badges. I know Mario Vrancic is earning his coaching badges, but I'm not sure on Tettey. I don't recall him saying that he's been doing his studies and stuff. But I think that the interview that sort of sparked all that talk was quite. It came across like he was talking quite informally, and he was almost sort of joking about a bit, wasn't he? Sort of saying, "Well, if they want to keep me, then I'll happily do some coaching and whatever." I don't know, but I think the one thing you can pretty safely say is that even if Tettey were to stick around as a player coach next season, he's not going to be playing very much in the Premier League, is he?
No, he isn't at all. And in many ways, that is probably a hat tip to Ollie Skip, isn't it? And the influence that he's had, the fact that Norwich have really struggled, and Jakob Sorensen, I suppose, as well. But it kind of shows that those two have done well. And there's been a subtle changing of the guard, I think, where Tettey would come on for the last 5 minutes. Now that seems to be Sorensen, doesn't it, to see out games. And that maybe is Norwich sort of view in the future and the way it goes. But who knows? He could yet sign a new 1-year deal. I've noticed that the other players have started calling him Grandad as well. So he's getting to that age, isn't he? And Elliot Bennett made that remark a couple of weeks ago when they were warming up about him bringing his Zimmer frame. So what a servant he has been. If this is the end, I guess the only sad point really, if this is him leaving, is the fact that he's not going to get sort of a reception from the supporters, be it a special game, which I know he said that maybe he wouldn't particularly want, but even if it's just a final game at Carrow Road, like Wes Hoolahan got, for example, that would be a real shame for someone who's given a lot of service to the club.
Yeah, I asked him about that at Molineux last year, which wasn't the best time to be talking about it, but he was the player that did the media that day. They'd lost 3-0, hadn't they? It was a real poor performance. But he just he almost laughed it off like, oh, no, it's not my sort of thing. I don't want all the attention on me and stuff like that. But yeah, that would be a shame if fans don't get the chance to say goodbye, because he's been a brilliant servant. He is a legend already, and he's always been very popular with fans for his personality on and off the pitch. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go and join Russell Martin at MK Dons. I know him and Vrancic joked about it on Instagram recently, didn't they? They both commented on one of Russ's Instagram posts, like messing around, and you could see it that, Alex and Russ went through a lot together at Norwich, and I'm sure get on very well. I think Tete would be, if Wes can play League 2 football at 38, then Tete can play League 1 at 35 and absolutely dominate in midfield still. And, he loves the physical side of stuff. He's still fit as a fiddle, isn't he? All those knee problems and things like that, he seems to have dealt with brilliantly in the recent years. And his passing game and stuff has improved so much under Farke that he'd be a brilliant signing for Russ. Him and Andrew Sermon dictating midfield and just get a load of fast kids running around them and Jerome, and you're sorted, aren't you?
There you go. That's a recipe for League One promotion, that is, isn't it? bring it back a few years. I see we've got quite a few comments. Thank you all very much for putting them down below. We'll just read this one by Mary Watson, who says, goodness, so sad to hear about Dr. Ian Gibson. Yes, huge Norwich fan sat behind me in the Barclay. Yeah, very sad news. James Hilton, just on the midfield point, has said, can you see another loan deal for Skip if we do go up? And if not, who could be a possible replacement? On the first part of that question, the more I think about it, the more I'm beginning to think it looks increasingly difficult. Not necessarily because Spurs may not be willing to loan him out, and that's definitely a facet to it. Mourinho's clearly a big fan. He spoke pretty openly, didn't he, at a press conference in February, I think, about considering recalling him in January. But equally, you would imagine he's going to go to Spurs and get a pre-season regardless of what happens, and a decision is probably going to be made late in the window. Are Norwich going to wait the whole pre-season for an answer on Ollie Skip? I can't see it. I think they'd want their squad together, as Stuart Webber and Daniel Farke tend to do, in place for that first game of the season as a general rule, maybe minus 1 or 2 bits. It just feels like maybe it's increasingly unlikely. But of course, this is all dependent on if Jose Mourinho is there, which may not be the case. But if he is, I could possibly see him looking to Skip and maybe playing a few younger players and then saying, well, this is a bit of a project now. And managers do that to keep themselves in jobs a little bit longer. How do you see it, Dave? Do you kind of feel that Norwich do have a good chance of keeping Ollie Skip? Because his performances have been that good that I think the fear is probably that he'd go straight into Tottenham's first team.
I'm the same. I'm starting to feel it like it's unlikely. I think maybe if Mourinho went, if Spurs have a bad end to the season, they lose the League Cup final and things like that, and then they bring in a big name who's not really interested in playing an academy kid in his first year, and Skip can find out that it's better to go out on loan again, then so big. He's still so young. He's only 20, isn't he? Norwich obviously would want him back. Fans would want him back. I think he'd be a really crucial part of what they would do next year. But Norwich need to know. They need an answer. They can't be getting close to pre-season and not know the situation. So they might just have to be a little bit patient. Maybe just have, wait into sort of June, something like that. See how things settle down at Tottenham. And I'm sure Webber and Farke will say to Skip, look, as soon as you could possibly let us know that you're ruled out, please do, because we need to crack on. And the other issue would be that I think potentially teams higher up the pyramid in the Premier League would be keen to have him. And Skip, maybe not Skip so much, but maybe his agent and his parents or whatever might just say, well, what if Norwich go down? You don't want a relegation on your CV. You don't want that dent to your confidence and things like that. because we can't sit here and talk confidently about the fact that Norwich are going to stay up, can we? Because the self-funded model and stuff means that until they can actually get established, being able to talk in those sort of confident terms is always going to be probably a bit of a fool's game. But yeah, fingers crossed, hopefully. But I've got a bit of a feeling that Norwich fans need to brace themselves for it not happening. But you have to remember Fraser Forster, League One season. You remember the promotion parade and everyone singing Fraser Forster one more year as the bus toured through Norwich, and that seemed like a real blow to lose him. Then what happens? They sign John Ruddy, and you get a club legend who ends up in the England squad a couple of years later. So there's always new heroes to come along, aren't there? I'm sure signing a good defensive midfielder is possible, although it's taken them a long time to replace Tete. So maybe I'm being optimistic there, but it's certainly going to be a pretty big issue. And if they do sign him, it's going to feel massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's going to be one that rumbles on throughout the summer. I've got absolutely no doubt about that until maybe there's a definitive answer either way, and hopefully that is in Norwich's favour. And maybe, who knows, maybe they do recruit another defensive midfielder and then there is a decision on Skip late in the window and they can snap him up then. But yeah, it does feel to me like maybe that one is going to be one that slips through their fingers a little bit, and then we're into the realms of how well do you solve that issue. A few
there
comments.
Sorensen as well, isn't there? And yep. He played the pass ahead of the seventh goal the other night, didn't he? Raking ball forward to Max Aarons, which was a nice pass. So I guess they could sort of plan for him to be that man if they'll have an idea, won't they? They'll have a decent idea of what's going to happen at this point. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is. A couple of questions about the Greek striker, which we've already answered. I'll see if we got any more. This is an interesting one from Joe Keeler. Who do you think will win the playoffs this year? That's an interesting one. I think if we're looking at the moment, who have you got in there? I'm sure Tony can flash up the table and show us. It's Brentford, Swansea, Barnsley, and Reading, I think, or Bournemouth. There you go, Reading in the top four. So you're probably looking at maybe Bournemouth slipping in. I think it's probably gone from Cardiff now. A couple of defeats have kind of hampered their momentum. Millwall are probably a bit far off it. So you're probably looking at anywhere between Brentford and Bournemouth really for the top six, Dave. Who do you sort of see coming up with Norwich?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because form is all over the place at the moment, isn't it? I mean, probably the team who are capable, or the teams who are capable of the best performances on the day are Reading and Brentford. Reading have really impressed me in the end. I thought they were in a false position, but in Elise, and Lucas Zhou's had sort of the season of his life, but Elise is a very good player who, you never know, if Buendia or Cantwell were to go for big money this summer, that might be the sort of player that Norwich would look at, a real talented, creative young player. So I would have thought one of those two, but if Swansea can get their act together, they were previously so good defensively, weren't they, that you'd think in a knockout scenario they would be in decent shape. But Bournemouth do look like they're creeping in there ominously, don't they? 3 wins in the spin, game in hand. They're only 4 points short of Swansea in fourth at the moment, and we all know that Bournemouth have an excellent squad, don't they? Dan Juma is probably one of the outstanding players in the division this year. So if right now I was to pick a team based on sort of what we've seen in the Championship in the past, in terms of a team who can nip into the playoffs slate on, I think I'd probably put my money on Bournemouth.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure, because I think if you'd have asked me a couple of weeks ago, I probably would have said Barnsley, just based on their form and how they suffocate teams and how difficult they are to play against. But equally, yeah, I think you make a good case for Bournemouth, actually. Reading, I'm not sure. I think they might fall just short. I think they might be the team that miss out. Swansea are in free fall. I think it'll probably be one of Brentford, Barnsley, Bournemouth, but I'm not narrowing it down that much. There's a real possibility that it could be all three sides that got relegated last season come back up quite plausibly. I think if it was in terms of quality, you'd say Brentford, but given their track record in recent seasons, I'm not sure. So I think I'm going to join you with Bournemouth. I think.
And that means all three bouncing back immediately then as well. If we're mapping it out as Norwich, Watford, Bournemouth, then then that means that all three teams will have bounced straight back, and that's the worst case scenario for Norwich for next season as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've not fully convinced myself on that. But yeah, I think that's what I think. Anyway, at this moment in time, a couple more questions before we turn our attention to tomorrow. Someone telling me to go for a man bun. I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, to be honest. It's quite. I haven't tried. I'll try and come back with that. Maybe that'll be my Paddy Davitt cap tomorrow. I'll present this with a man bun, baby. I'm not sure I've got on top. Maybe if Norwich secure promotion, possibly. Let's see what else we've got here. Someone said Bournemouth easy. Carsten, love from Denmark. Thank you very much, Carsten. Hope you're doing well. Ollie Baines, this is an interesting one to end on in terms of questions. He says, "Is this the season we wave cheerio to Mario? Seems like it's a sensible time to call it a day and invest in a new, younger number 10 to come through behind the current crop."
Yeah, Mario's not even been playing very much at all recently, has he? I'm just checking his age. He's about to be 33, isn't he? No, he's about to be 32 in May. Sorry, put a year on him. So he's still a decent age, but slightly differently to Tete. Mario's probably at the age where he needs to consider that last big contract of his career. I think Tete already had to take a wage drop to stay with Norwich, didn't he? So that if Mario could get a lower Bundesliga move or something like that, then you wouldn't blame him for taking it. And frankly, if Norwich are in the Premier League, then yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him move on. He's had 4 seasons at Norwich. He's done really well at times, but Farke has always generally fallen back to him being an impact sub, hasn't he? If you look over the course of his career, particularly in the Premier League last year, Daniel never felt quite comfortable with playing him in central midfield because he really needs to be at the top of his game physically to handle the defensive side of things, doesn't he? But we all know he's got a wand of a left foot, a great free kick on him. He's got that eye for a creative pass. So if he was willing to stick around and Farke sees him as still being able to fit into the team and be a competitor for the number 10 role, then I think most Norwich fans would be more than happy to see him sign a 1 or 2 year contract extension. But my instinct probably suggests that they'll keep Stiepermann and maybe let Vrancic go. But that would require a decent option to be available to Mario.
Yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't surprise me if Mario went back to Germany, to be honest, and to get some more game time. I think he easily could do a decent job in the Bundesliga too, couldn't he? For sure. I think for maybe a side that has aims of getting promoted to the Bundesliga with his experience, I think he'd be remembered fondly by Norwich fans as well. It's that part of the show. Do get your score predictions in. We're going to turn our attention just very briefly to tomorrow's game. I guess the obvious question is, Dave, Norwich can do it. Do you think they will do it tomorrow?
Yeah, I do. I'd be surprised if they don't win tomorrow. Unbeaten in 12. They just keep rolling on. And I'd certainly be surprised to see them lose. But, as I said earlier, Derby, they're not scrapping for their lives or anything. They still are looking slightly nervously over their shoulder. But it's just the injuries for me. Norwich have got a fully fit and firing squad. If they get an early goal like they did the other night, it could be another, cricket score, really. They aren't in a good place at all. And you look at Wayne Rooney's media this week, they've just had a takeover, haven't they? They've got a new owner, but it's still to be verified with the EFL or something along those lines. A Spanish guy's taken over. And all of Rooney's media stuff really is talking about the future. He's not, I think there was a quote, wasn't there? Oh, yeah, we'll just about get a team together for this game. They've got a few kids playing and stuff like that. They're probably struggling to fill the bench like Norwich were early in the season. I think they'll be absolutely dreading it. And if they can park the bus and frustrate Norwich through to a 0-0 draw, a bit like Preston did overall, frustrated Norwich and Norwich didn't take their chances. If they're not on it as much as they were on Tuesday night, then yeah, there's that chance. But I just think the Norwich squad are just perfectly tuned at the moment. They're fit, they're firing, they're confident, they're happy. And they've got something to really fight and play for. Have Derby's players really got something to run through a brick wall to run through a Grant Hanley for? Probably not. So I think I'd go. I think I'll go 3-0. 3-0 Norwich.
Like it. Yeah, I think Norwich will win. I think they'll break that curse that Colin's talking about, and their record at the last 20 years there at Pride Park not being very good. I think they will win tomorrow. Not quite sure they'll get promotion done tomorrow. I think maybe more likely in the week, or as you mapped out before the Bournemouth game. But there we go. Dave, thank you very much. I think that seems like a nice place to leave it as we hit the hour mark. Thank you all very much for watching. Dave and Pad will be at Pride Park tomorrow to watch all the action as it unfolds. Of course, we'll have one eye on Swansea at lunchtime to see if it is possible, and if it does, then I may end up having to watch 2 games instead of 1 from the comfort of my bedroom. But we'll see. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you again very, very soon.